What's up guys, this is Teddy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video we're going to be talking about a very hot topic, and that topic is dependency injection and the repository pattern. So the repository pattern and dependency injection are ways that we take database calls out of the controller. So in a nutshell, this is like the hack. This is what's going to help you really understand repository pattern and dependency injection. And that is, we're going to take all these database calls out and we are going to put them into another class. And dependency injection is kind of like the glue that holds this form of abstraction together. And a form of abstraction, at the end of the day, the reason we do abstraction, we do repository pattern, is so that our controllers don't get too cluttered. So if we just had a method that just said get list of clubs, that is really the whole entire idea, instead of having this. And it makes it a lot easier to read, it makes it a lot easier to test, and it makes it a lot easier to maintain. And once again, that's really at the why we do these things. So first things first, let's just go here and we're going to add a folder called repository. And you could call this service. A lot of people call this a service. What is the difference between a service and what is the difference between a repository? A service is for non-database calls. Usually when you see a repository, it's just for database calls. And since that's what we're doing, we'll just call it a repository. You could call it a service though. Some people do call it a service. Then we're going to go here and then we're going to add interfaces. And I don't think we have another interfaces folder. You could store these in the data folder. Excuse me. You could put these in the data folder, but it's really personal preference. So let's just go here. We're going to go to our first interface, and usually you just want to start out with the interfaces first. So we're going to go to interface, and we're going to call this iClub interface, or iClub repository. Great. So the next thing that we need to do, if you don't know what an interface is, I'm assuming that you do, but if you don't, I'll just kind of briefly explain what interfaces are. Interfaces are going to be full of it just looks like methods that have had, I call it like the top chopped off of them. It's just the signature. And you may be wondering, why do we have these? What does it even make sense? It's really because of dependency injection and polymorphism, and I will show you in a second. I just talked about more confusing words. I'm just layering confusing words on top of confusing words, but just gonna hang in there, and hopefully it'll make more sense as time goes on. So we need to change that, change the name, and we need to bring in the club. So we've got our model right here, and the next thing is we want to bring back, we want to do a get by ID async, and we're going to give it an int. And also another good side effect of interfaces is that it kind of just gives you a good little blueprint. It forces you to think about your code a little bit, and it forces you to think about like what am I really going to put into this controller? I think we're getting a little, let's see, get let's see, I don't think we need that one yet. Actually, let's just go ahead and do it. Okay, so for the city, remember at the very beginning, I told you guys we were going to have a way that you could geolocate people when they first came into your app. It would geolocate people. We'll just go ahead and do that right now. Actually, we'll just go ahead and get club by city. We'll just go ahead and put that code in there while we're at it. Get club by city, and then we're going to pass in a string. Then we're going to pass in the city. Then we're going to go bool. Then we're going to do our regular CRUD commands down here. We'll go club. Then we'll go bool update, bool delete, and then bool save. So this may not seem like there's a grander design, but all your repositories are going to kind of have this pattern. You're going to have like a get all, you're going to have a get by ID, you're going to have other types of just miscellaneous calls to your database that you're going to need. And that's one of the reasons that we have a repository, so you can do these more complex like get club by city, get club by category, and all of these more complex database calls. But usually at the bottom, you always have your adds, your updates, your deletes, and your saves. So just kind of realize that there's a grander design here in that we have our more complicated and all of our get commands up here, and then we have our CRUDs down here. And that's kind of one of the reasons that we actually have the repository pattern. So we're going to go into now we're going to actually make the repository. And I just clicked controller and I don't know why. All right, we're going to go add, we're going to go new item, then we're going to go class, then we're going to go club repository. We go club repository, club repository. Okay, we're going to bring that in, and then we also need to implement this interface. In order, even though you bring it in, there will still be a red squiggly line underneath it, and you need to be aware that you also need to you always have to implement every single interface. If you ever inherit from an interface, which you're not technically inheriting, but if you ever do, you have to make sure you bring in all these methods as well. So next thing is we're going to want to fill in all of these methods. And the first thing that you always want to do whenever you make a repository is that because the repository is centered around your database, you need to bring in your database. And people would call it your application DB context, but I think a good way of just thinking about it is it's your database. You're literally just bringing in all of your database tables. What is this? Okay, great. Then we're going to bring in the context. Okay, then we're going to assign the field right here. Okay, remember, if you don't know what this is doing, if you're looking up at the top of your class here and you're just like, I don't even understand what's really going on here, just remember that you can right click, you can go to definition, and you can see what's going on underneath the hood. And you can see that this is our application DB context. Remember, we created this. If you have to remember all of these right here, and I'll just kind of bring it out here for more graphical representation. Nice little cool word I just used, but these are your database tables. Just remember that whenever you're looking at this right here, just imagine as if you're just going into your database tables and you're looking at your tables just like this. So even though you're pulling them in through code, whenever you access this, whenever you bring this races into your app just like this, that's just literally just like bringing in that database table and just dropping it into your code. So just remember that. And we also have, with Entity Framework, of course, as being that it's going to give us all this functionality, it's also going to give us the functionality to add stuff. So we're going to go in here, and you can also just straight up just add entities. So I'll just give you a nice little refresher on like what's actually going on here. So entity framework is such a complicated framework that people don't really realize that when you are calling add, you're not actually adding this to the database. What it's doing is when it's calling this add, it's generating all the SQL, and then once you actually click this save, that's when it's actually sending the SQL to the database and actually creating your entity. Be very aware of that. So it's done through tracking, so it's within this scope. And if you had two ads, like another crazy thing to think about is like, what if you had two ads? It would have difficulty tracking it because it's tracked through the scope. And if you don't know what scope is really at the end of the day what's in between these two brackets. People will complicate it, and it can be more complicated than that. You know, I'm not giving anybody, shit, but it's just, it's not really that complicated. All right, so we'll go here, then we'll go return, then we'll go save. So then we have delete, then we're going to have context dot clubs dot to list. And with link, you could also say to array, but we want to return this. We definitely want to return this as a list. Okay, let's see here. Oh. And because this is async, we're going to have to, context is not null here. Oh, okay, I forgot. I gotta add to list async. Great. And also gotta bring it in. So whenever you are using async and you're using task, you have to use to list async. And the reason why we wrap this in a task is because this is returning something, but it's not returning the actual, this is just like giving you like an object just to kind of satisfy like whoever needs this. And it's just saying like, here's like a buzzer or like one of those restaurant buzzers. You're not getting your seat yet, but you get a buzzer that's going to tell you when you're going to get your meal, if that makes sense. Like whenever you go to like a really popular restaurant and they give you the buzzer, the task is almost like the buzzer for the restaurant. And they're saying, here's, we don't have your table yet, but whenever your table does come, whenever your object does come back, it's going to give you that like little task thing. So hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to do get. Next thing we're going to do get by ID. So we'll go return await context dot clubs dot first or default async. And because it's async, we're going to have to do first or default. So we go in here, we go I dot ID, and we go ID. So what's the difference between this one and this one? This one's returning a whole entire list. This one is just returning one. That's very important because that's how we're going to refactor our detail page. There in certain, like if you're building a feed, you want a list of clubs. If you're building just one page, you just want a individual page, and you want it to be very detailed. And that's the reason why we have first or default, and we have to list. To list is going to return a list. It's going to return an IEnumerable, which is the same thing as a list. An IEnumerable is actually inherits from a list. So they're pretty much the same exact thing, but with first or default, we're returning more than one. So, all right, so get club by city. And this one was almost like a custom command. There wasn't anywhere else out on the internet to find it, so this is like I actually had to like go out on the internet and find this one. So we're going to go address.city.contains, and we're going to pass in the city, and we're going to do a toList async. So basically it's going to search for, it's going to go into the clubs, and watch this. Notice the extra dot right here. So we're going into, I'll show you what it is. So we're going into our club, then we're going into our address, and then we're going to search by the city. So if you look at our model for our club, we had these navigation properties, we have these forum properties, and this what makes databases so powerful. Then we go in, then we go to our city, and that's what allows us to do a lot these cool, custom database commands. So next thing, we're gonna go var saved is equal to context dot save changes. Then we're going to go return saved 0 and do true or false. So if this returns more than 0, it's going to return true or false. And it's a good way of, instead of just save changes by itself, returns an int. It returns a 0 or a 1, and I like it to where it actually returns a bool. So that was very easy. And the next thing, we actually have to go through and we have to create the race repository. So we're going to go in here. We're going to go to interfaces. We're going to go iRace repository. Repository. All right, just like that. And it's going to be pretty much the same exact thing. Let me see here. Actually, because they're so similar, we could probably just go ahead and toss all this into the, and we're not going to have a get club by city, but get all. There we go. And we can just replace these and save a bunch of time. There we go. Sweet. And we need to lowercase these. Great. Then we're going to go into our repository. We're going to make our repository. Race repository. And I don't know why that made a class. We want our interface. We want this to be a class. Okay. Actually, and I may just type in, let me see here. Yeah, actually a lot of these are the same. Let's just go ahead and, this could be a little risky. Actually, let's not do that. Let's go ahead and type them all out. That could end badly. It's better. Sometimes it's better just to take the high road. Okay, that's funny. All right, so we're gonna go in here. All right, I'm gonna go context. Okay, so first thing, we need to implement this repository. And of course, we need to implement the interface. All right. And actually, I think the better thing would to be just bring this over here and copy and paste them as, you know, kind of we see fit. I think that that's probably a better solution here. So we can go into here, go add, we'll go ahead and toss it in there. Go context, go copy, paste that in there. Then we'll go get all. Go races. And we have to bring that in, I think. Okay, then we're going to do get by ID. What's going on here? Okay. Got to make this async. Okay, races. Where address.city contains city. And hopefully that works. Okay, great. So that works. We're going to do get by ID. Just go ahead and paste that in there. Add that. Make sure to add the async. Then we're going to go here. Go save. Then we're going to do, oh, I forgot to do the context.update. So we'll go context.update. And we're going to go ahead and pass in that club. And turn save just like that, and we can pass that over here. Okay, so those I think are pretty much good to go. So here. And get by ID async. Let's see. Pulling from the wrong table. And need to turn that to a semicolon. Great. So that looks good. Next thing that we need to do is we need to add these to the program file. So one thing that you will know is that whenever you are adding services or whenever you are adding, hold on, my headphones are going crazy. Whenever you're adding services or whenever you're adding repositories, you have to go into here and you have to actually add them. So services dot add scoped. And we're going to go club service. And we're going to go club service. Builder dot services dot add scoped. Service. Race service I called it a service. It's actually a repository. 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 Great. And we're going to bring this one in. Let's see here. So we're going to go in here. Just going to copy and paste that because it's not wanting to find it. Then paste that into there. And that should work. But we're not out of the woods just yet. We need to actually refactor our controllers for the repository pattern. So we're going to go into here. We're going to go club repository. Then bring in club repo. Just name it that. Go into here. Then go up here, assign field, and instead of bringing in our clubs through our context, we can actually delete this. We're going to bring them in through our repository. And it's a lot of work, but the main goal is that we don't have to worry about this in the future because we're kind of like future proofing our code to a certain extent. So we're going to go get all. And because this is async, we now have to make this an async function. And we need to make this async. And this needs to be an enumerable. Great. So then we go in here. We need to change this to that. Then we need to await. Get by ID async. Great. And let's go ahead and test them out just to make sure that they're working. Yep, looking good. And we might need to go back into our repository. I think I know what's going on here. We also need to do an include for the clubs because it's not bringing in our address. So another very important point here is that make sure I got this. You need to include, whenever you use a navigation property, Entity Framework is going to use what's called lazy loading. And if you look on this clubs, if you look on this club entity, or if you look on this club model, address is a navigation property. And on databases, there's no such thing as navigation properties, so it's not going to bring it in for you unless you explicitly tell it to. So that's why you have to have this include, otherwise this address is not going to be brought in to our model. So just very, very, very important point. Always remember that if you have a navigation property on your entity, or if you have a one-to-many relationship, you have to have include, or otherwise it's not going to bring it in for you. So we go here, we're going to go club, then it's got our address for us. So let's go ahead and we'll refactor the races controller, and we will be pretty much done after this. So we'll go race repository. Race repository. Let's see. There we go. Great. Then we can go ahead and delete this. Then we'll go here. Then we'll go, oh, got to make sure we have our underscore for there. Then we need to make sure that we're bringing back an INumerable for this, because it's actually an INumerable. Then we go task, action result. Then we're going to go here, dot get all. System, okay. Great. Then we're going to go here. We're going to do the exact same thing. And we're going to task, async. Then we're going to go here. Also make sure you got your await. Go raise repository. Get here. Then it's going to toss it into there. Let's go ahead and run this bad boy and see what happens. So we're going over here. Got our club page figured out. Hopefully, it might not work because it's probably gonna do the same thing. Yeah, it's doing the same thing. So this will be a good little test for us. Remember, whenever you're accessing whenever you're going into like a nested model, or you're navigating through other models, or you're navigating through one-to-many relationships in your model, or you're bringing in one-to-many relationships, always remember you got to do the include, or you could do a join. And an include is just an abstraction for what a join is. And if I could give anybody a piece of advice, is you better know what joins are when you first start work, because joins are really important. So we're going to go in here, and you just bring in the whole entire entity. And one day I could actually do like a deep dive on like what include is, but because it's actually kind of interesting how it works. But for right now, this video is getting kind of long, so we will just stick with regular include. All right, so we go in here, go races, and it works. So we've refactored our whole entire app for dependency injection and the repository pattern. Our app is now scalable, and it's actually looking really good. It's actually looking like a pretty decent app. Anyway, hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for watching.